Chapter 27. In order to express their sincerity, Jiang City No. 1 Middle School invited a lot of media to the scene. Fu Jiu stood in the middle, wearing a pair of faded jeans, a black belt, a t-shirt, and silver hair. She was so handsome that it made people's hearts beat faster. He Honghua stood next to her, and it was easy to see the joy on her face. In fact, this was the first time her daughter had come to their school since she entered high school. Fu Jiu seemed to think of something. She twisted her ear stud with one hand and said in a low voice, "Mom, that Director Zhang will apologize to us later. Just ignore him and let me answer all his questions." Okay. He Honghua was indeed impulsive, so she naturally listened to her daughter. Fu Jiu and the other 5 students sat together. The reporters were already eager to try. After all, on the internet, everyone was waiting for the follow-up of the incident at Jiang City No. 1 Middle School. Fu Jiu looked at this scene calmly until Director Zhang appeared. At this moment, Director Zhang was no longer as aggressive as before. The shirt he was wearing was wrinkled, and he looked as dispirited as could be. More than that, he was unwilling to accept it. These students were clearly trash who couldn't study well. If they weren't trash, they were poor bastards. Why did he have to apologize to these people? But there had to be an end to this incident. If he didn't apologize, he wouldn't be able to survive in the future. Thinking of this, Director Zhang walked to the front of the row of students and said, "I'm sorry." Those students weren't stupid. Looking at his attitude, they knew that he didn't mean it. So no one said sorry. When Director Zhang saw them like this, he looked up and said to the reporters, "I'm sorry, I've said that too. But reporters, look at these kids, they're all so stubborn. Back then, I couldn't do anything about them. If you want to apologize, apologize honestly," Fu Jiu said and interrupted him coldly. "Director Zhang, what are you talking about?" Director Zhang was agitated by Fu Jiu's words, and he blurted out, "Shut up. If it weren't for people like your mom who came from the countryside and tried to use her connections to stuff money into the school, would this have happened to me?" Fu Jiu laughed and retorted coldly, "It seems that the school didn't call us here to apologize, but to put on a show for everyone to see, right? Otherwise, why is Director Zhang still like this?" Director Zhang really didn't expect that the trash who would wilt after just one sentence from him in the past would become so eloquent. The media captured this scene and kept pressing the shutter button. Director Zhang did not know how to do public relations, but it did not mean that the school could not. Hearing this, a school leader immediately scolded in a low voice, "You are the one who should shut up. These students are all sincerely invited by our school. You should know your place before you speak." This was a warning. Director Zhang understood and lowered his head with a pale face. He clenched his fists and said to Fu Jiu, "It was my fault just now. I've always been in the wrong. I'm sorry for making you lose your studies." Chapter 28. That was hatred. The hatred of every student who was fired by Director Zhang. Director Zhang said stubbornly, "If you didn't steal it, would you return it?" The girl didn't expect that this scum would still say that. She was so angry that her whole body was shaking. Fu Jiu pressed her hand down and said faintly, "According to Director Zhang, it's better for everyone to not return the things they picked up. Because if you are poor, you will be wrongly accused of being a thief." At this point, she looked up, and her silver hair was fierce. "I heard that the school leaders want to recommend Director Zhang to teach in other places. Shouldn't such a teacher be banned?" Director Zhang's fingers trembled slightly. That school leader immediately interrupted him. "No, don't worry. The education industry doesn't want this kind of person." Hearing that, Director Zhang froze. He turned around with an ugly expression and looked at that school leader. He had no more hope. The reporters swarmed over, and someone asked him, do you feel guilty? There were also reporters interviewing the students, and one of them asked, since you were wronged, why didn't you say it earlier? Did you want to blow it up? At any time, there would be such malice. Fujio glanced over coldly. The media colleagues couldn't bear to watch any longer. They pushed the reporter aside and said, we've all seen that post online. Some people are wronged and fired, but their hearts are still kind. I would like to ask the students, what is it that allows you to maintain such a kind heart? The microphone was handed to the girl who was accused of being a thief. The girl took it and put it in Fujio's hand, looking at her with bright eyes. Fujio smiled and turned around. She looked straight into the camera, and her eyes were like dazzling lights. Because we all believe that justice may be late, but it will never be absent. At that moment, the students couldn't help but have their eyes turn red. Yes. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. We have come this far because of this belief. Pack! Chi Nemo pressed the remote control of the TV, glanced at his subordinate next to him, and frowned slightly. Why are you crying? When I was young, I didn't know anything except for computers. My teacher told me to study because he thought I didn't do proper work. Fatty rubbed his face as he said, if Boss Chin didn't poach me, I wouldn't have become a hacker. Chi Nemo glanced at the other one. Rich second generation, don't tell me you were persuaded to study as well. I'm touched. Coco nibbled on the rabbit's ear. That bad director deserves to be destroyed. Captain, you should call your mother right now and make sure he can't go anywhere. Hearing this, Chi Nemo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his gaze calm. I don't have to do anything, someone will make it hard for him. Who? Coco was surprised. Chi Mo's slender fingers flicked the silver lighter in his hand. Spade Z, hearing this, Fatty and Coco immediately jumped up. Boss Chin, are you saying that Spade Z was the one behind all this? Chapter 29. Among these students. Coco and Fatty couldn't help but look at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Let's not talk about how ordinary these 6 students were. One of them was a gay who had once harassed Boss Chin. How could someone like that be Spade Z? Chi Nemo glanced up. In the smoke, that handsome face was faintly discernible. Are you guys acting strange? Didn't I say before that Spade Z is a student? But how can Boss Chin be sure that Spade Z is among them? Fatty still didn't understand. Chi Nemo glanced at the news page, a fatal sentence. Because only the victim would want to seek justice. Fatty paused for a moment and immediately understood. If the King of Spades was here, the range could be narrowed even more. Because only 4 of them were men. The registered account of the King of Spades didn't have a gender display either. But judging from his style of doing things, he should be a guy. That night, at the Fu residence, Fujio took out the USB. Just as she walked downstairs, she heard He Honghua on the phone. Her voice was loud, as if she was arguing with the other party. Obviously, the result was not satisfactory. Otherwise, He Honghua wouldn't have lowered her hands and stared blankly at a place. Seeing her walk down, He Honghua smiled and said, "Come on, sit down. Mom is stewing your favorite pig trotters with chili and potatoes. Madam woke up at 3 in the morning and stewed it for young master. She simmered it over a small fire. The auntie walked over with the tea. You can eat it later. It's definitely fragrant and soft." Hearing that, Fujio put her arms around He Honghua's shoulders and said, "Thank you, Mom." "You child, what are you thanking me for?" He Honghua's round face blushed. "Hurry up and get up. How old are you? Why are you still hugging me?" Although he said that, he couldn't hide the happiness on his face. However, at this moment, The phone on the coffee table rang again and again, very ear-piercing. Honghua glanced at the caller ID, and her smile faded away. She wanted to send Fu Jiu away. Fu Jiu was a smart person. As soon as she saw her mother's expression, she handed her a cup of tea before Honghua could say anything. She said in a calm voice, "Mom, take it. No matter what happens, I'll be with you." Hearing her daughter's words, Honghua felt an inexplicable sense of strength in her heart. She extended her hand and swiped the screen open. "Hey, tell them that I, Honghua, have never mistreated them in the past year. Now that the esports competition is about to begin, do they have a conscience to leave just like that? 100,000 per person. Do say, you're asking for too much. Mr. He, I'm talking to you nicely. Look at you, what's with this attitude?" Duzay's tone seemed to be specially used to annoy people. "Fortunately, I left early and followed Sister Qing. People from the countryside are from the countryside. How can they be so short-sighted? President He, for the sake of my kindness, Duzay, will also give you some advice. Hurry up and divorce President Fu. Do you think a fat village girl like you is worthy of fighting with Sister Qing?" Pa! Honghua hung up the phone with a heavy thud, and the phone was thrown out. Her chest was heaving up and down violently, and there were too many emotions in her eyes. Anger, sadness, and indignation. Then, she saw Fu Jiu looking at her, and she immediately said, "The pig trotters in the pot should be ready. Mom will get you a bowl." Chen Xiaodong didn't know what was going on, but when he heard his young master speak in such a lazy manner, he felt a chill run down his spine. "Young master, you called for me." Fu Jiu closed the esports magazine on her lap and leaned back. Her silver hair fell down, and she said with an indescribable devilish charm, "Give me the roster of the company's players." Since she had to join the Qin group in the end, she might as well strike first. "Look, we've been fighting for so many days. Even a dog would have feelings." Fu Jiu continued to type, "The weather has been good recently. I believe Almighty Qin already knows that I'm in Jiang City. What do you think, Almighty Qin? Are you interested in coming out to meet me tomorrow?" Qin Mo looked at the pure silver laptop in his hands. He thought about many things that Spade Z would say to his question. Or deny or evade. But he didn't expect Spade Z to ask him out. She looked really seductive. Qin Mo sat in the huge conference room. When he saw the reply, he asked curiously, "Are you a girl or a guy?" Fu Jiu paused, and her eyes flickered. "Male." After replying, Fu Jiu typed with both hands and added, "What? Almighty Qin, don't tell me you've fallen for me." When Qin Mo heard this, his originally cold black eyes suddenly lit up with a terrifying flame. The secretary standing behind him could not help but cough violently. Chapter 33. This person really dared to say that. CEO wouldn't kill him out of anger, would he? Secretary Liang, who originally wanted to go home early, decided not to leave. Watching CEO being flirted with was more interesting than watching TV at home. What a pity. As soon as he had this thought, Qin Mo picked up his laptop and threw it at him indifferently. Since Secretary Liang likes to watch the show in the company, then stay here and work overnight. I'll check the results tomorrow. Secretary Liang. CEO, you can't be like this. Qin Mo pressed the elevator button and walked into the team resting area on the top floor. He raised the corner of his mouth, and that smile slowly blossomed, like a peerless ice flower in the Arctic. Fu Jiu saw that there was no reply, so she typed another question mark. Ding. Chin Mo sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, opened his laptop, and saw this message. He typed slowly, "I'm not interested in men, but if you were a woman, I would definitely let you have a taste of what it means to like someone." He typed the word "like" very hard. It was definitely not a pure meaning. Fu Jiu understood what he meant, and she blushed inexplicably. She didn't want to fall out with him before they even met. Fu Jiu cleverly changed the topic. "When exactly are you free tomorrow? Morning or afternoon?" "Afternoon." 2 more words. Fu Jiu thought that this man always spoke so little if she didn't provoke him. Fu Jiu looked at her watch. "Then wait for me after school. I have my last class at 6, so I can be there at 6:15. The Lanning Cafe near a university. See you there." After saying that, Fu Jiu wanted to go offline. But she didn't expect that there would be another message from the other side. It wasn't warm at all. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Chin Mo's eyes were indifferent. "Why do you want to meet? I'm always being chased like this. It's annoying." After Fu Jiu sent the message, she put down her towel and waited for a reply. Of course, she couldn't tell him the real reason online. Chin Mo only replied with a "ha" sound. It was quite cold, and he obviously didn't believe her. Then, he typed another message. "Tell me your contact information." Fu Jiu also thought about this. She didn't want to leave her phone number, so she simply left her WeChat ID. "Got it." The other party replied without a single punctuation mark. Sure enough, the words were like the person, arrogant beyond belief. It seemed that this godly CEO didn't want to continue chatting with her. As expected, girls were more popular in the game. But she had seen him anyway. When they went to the cafe, they could just say Chin Mo's name. She was afraid that Almighty Chin would ask for a VIP room at a rich man's place, the kind that wouldn't reveal any information. "That's alright, I'll use WeChat again." After making up her mind, Fu Jiu turned off the game and went to sleep. She didn't have the habit of carrying her phone with her, so she didn't know that there were 3 WeChat friend verification messages waiting for her to verify them. On the top floor of the Chin group, outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of the entire city were lit up. Inch by inch, the shadows were reflected in Chin Mo's bottomless eyes. He held a glass of red wine in one hand and looked at his phone screen. His eyes gradually turned cold. "Why haven't you accepted my friend request yet?" "Good, very good." Chapter 34. The next day, Fu Jiu took her wallet and was about to go out in her school uniform. "Young master, wait." Driver Old Wong was still eating fried dough sticks. "I'll start the car now and take you to school." "Young master seems to be up earlier than yesterday." "No need, I'll skate over." Fu Jiu stood in front of the door and pointed at the skateboard under her feet. Driver Old Wong was surprised. "You're not taking the car?" "Uncle Wong, you don't have to wait outside anymore. It's autumn and it's getting colder. You're old, so I can go by myself." As she said this, Fu Jiu's figure disappeared, leaving only her lingering voice. Driver Old Wong froze in place. Was young master concerned about him? Old Wong knew Fu Jiu's previous absurdity better than anyone else. He thought that young master was only trying to get some money from madam, so he behaved so sensibly recently. Who would have thought that young master had really changed? She had changed so much that it made people feel warm in their hearts. 8:00 was the time when the school was the busiest. All kinds of luxury cars were parked at the entrance. This was not strange for Jiang City No. 1 Middle School. Because most of the students here came from rich families, and it was normal for them to compare at this age, so they would ask their chauffeurs to take them to school. In the gap between the rows of luxury cars, a handsome figure dashed past. Vaguely, one could only see the dazzling silver hair. It was Fuzhou. Her left leg was on the skateboard, and she was wearing a big black headset on her head. Her school uniform fluttered in the wind as she bent her knees, revealing a part of her fair waist. The lines were so beautiful that many girls wanted to take out their phones and take a picture of them. So cool. I thought he was so cool when he was interviewed yesterday. Now he looks even cooler, skateboarding. What should I do? I think I'm going to change my love. Fuzhou, Fuzhou. As if she heard the girl's words, Fuzhou looked back and curled up the corner of her mouth. In an instant, countless girls fell for it. After this incident, everyone's opinion of Fuzhou had changed. Especially that female classmate, Shui Yaoyao, who didn't have a good family background. She officially returned to school today and requested to be in the same class as Fuzhou. When he saw Fuzhou enter the classroom, he immediately raised the steamed bun in his hand. My mom steamed this herself. She asked me to thank you. Because of Shui Yaoyao's action, all the students in the class looked over at Fuzhou and started discussing. Fuzhou definitely won't eat her buns. What if she gets a stomachache from eating something unclean? I know, right? Hey, don't tell me she likes Fuzhou. Gosh, why doesn't she look at herself in the mirror? She's just a big fat pig, and she dares to think about Fuzhou. Hearing these words, Shui Yaoyao bit her lip in embarrassment. Chapter 35. At that time, Fuzhou didn't know. It was because of one small action of hers. From then on, Shui Yaoyao swore that she would protect this young man. Because he protected her, Fuzhou didn't think she had done anything that moved people. But when people expressed their gratitude, of course, she had to accept it sincerely. Although she was a person who cared about appearance, she didn't like it when people mocked her appearance and body shape. What's wrong with being fat during puberty? It's normal. She went back to her seat with the fragrant bun in her mouth. Fuzhou turned on her phone. She was going to search for how to learn physics, which was her weakness after all. However, before she could open the web page, 5 verification messages appeared on WeChat. The first one was normal, just like the sender's style. I am Qin Mo. The last 4 were also normal. She was stimulated by the other side of Almighty Qin. Every single one of them was a cold heh, and it was extremely cold. Fuzhou admitted that she was in the wrong in this matter. But at that time, this man didn't say that he wanted to add her. Fuzhou paused and clicked accept. Thinking that they were going to meet today and work together in the future, she replied, I went to bed last night and didn't have my phone with me. I just saw your verification message. After sending the message, Fuzhou subconsciously waited for a reply. But there was no reply at all during class. Fuzhou, who was as cool as ever, quickly put this matter behind her mind. The physics teacher was teaching, and Fuzhou was frowning. Was she the only one who thought that this subject wasn't meant for humans to learn? Without the tablet, class became longer and longer. In the evening, the phone in her desk vibrated. Fuzhou took it out and saw that it was a voice message from Qin Mo. I'm in class, can't listen. She raised her hand and typed, very succinctly. He didn't reply again. Fuzhou didn't care. After 3 minutes, Qin Mo texted back, change the meeting place. I'll wait for you at the school gate. My car is easy to recognize, you should know. Fuzhou, she knew. Not only her, but all the teachers and students in the school should have recognized the top-of-the-line military Hummer. Not to mention Jiang City, there was not a second one in the entire 3 provinces in the northeast. That car and the red license plate number were indicative of his distinguished identity. But if that was the case, wouldn't she have to get into his car in front of everyone? This time, Xiaodong was going to go crazy again, okay. She didn't care. Qi Nemo tilted his head to look at the words on his phone before sitting up on the bed. He looked like he had just woken up. His dark eyes were still a little heavy, and his white shirt was half open, revealing the man's strong, honey-colored chest. Every inch of it was seductive and sexy, and it was enough to make one's nose bleed. He tilted his head. His hair, which had been trimmed to the point of perfection, slightly covered his eyes. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and replied in a domineering tone, "Don't turn off your phone again." Chapter 36. Even through the screen, Fu Jiu could feel how cold the man's expression was when he typed this sentence. He really couldn't turn off his phone. Turning it off would delay things. It was past 5 o'clock. The people on the top floor kept looking up at the time. Why isn't CEO Qin here yet? I think he waited for someone's WeChat for most of the night. Whose WeChat is so important? I don't know. While they were talking, the door was pulled open with a swoosh. Qi Nemo walked in with his shirt half open, and his black hair was like an arrogant, ink-black night. He was so cold and cool that people instantly stopped talking. But his body was so good that many people started swallowing their saliva after taking a look. Coco came over and asked, "Captain, did you sleep here last night? Was the company too busy?" Qi Nemo didn't answer him. Instead, he turned sideways and pressed the company phone on the desk. "Prepare a set of clothes for me and send them up immediately." "Yes." Secretary Liang was very efficient. Qi Nemo took the shirt from his hands, his fingers fiddling with the sleeves, buttoning them up one by one. Then he said slowly, "Spadesy asked to meet me." "What?" Bang! Coco and Fatty stood up from their chairs at the same time. Meeting? The kind of meeting between online gamers. This was too unreal. Could it be a trap? This guy is very sly. Coco guessed. Fatty agreed. CEO Qin, let's bring more people. We can't let him escape this time. Do you think I wouldn't notice if it was a trap? Or? Qi Nemo looked up casually, and his eyes were cold. Are you reminding me of the time I was tricked? Coco and Fatty froze at the same time, and their scalps went numb. No, sob, the CEO is so scary today. At the same time, the last class had started. Usually, at this time, no one was in the mood to study. Everyone was looking down at the time on their phones. Fu Jiu was no exception. After all, she had an appointment. The English teacher knew that they couldn't listen anymore, so he thought of a few questions to lighten the mood. Then he called Fu Jiu up. What kind of girl do you like? What type of girl do you like? Everyone in the class knew that Fu Jiu was always the last in the exams. He couldn't understand English at all. Although some girls were interested in this question, they knew that Fu Jiu couldn't answer it. Jiang Feiyang sat next to Fu Jiu, looking like he was watching a good show. Xue Tingting was anxious. She took out a pen and poked at Fu Jiu's uniform from behind, writing one word on the paper, "Beautiful." As long as Fu Jiu could answer with one word, she would pass. But she was afraid that Fu Jiu didn't even know this word. The teacher was also looking at her. Fu Jiu smiled. Her thin lips parted, and she spoke fluent English. Do you think I don't have feelings just because I'm poor and ugly? If God had given me beauty and wealth, I would have made it as hard for you to leave me as it is now for me to leave you. Her voice had always been pleasant to listen to. Now that she was using an authentic British accent to slowly recite those sentences, it was full of exotic magnetism. Almost all the students in the class were intoxicated by it. This is. The English teacher was very excited. The original sentence from Jane Eyre. It seems like the teacher likes this book very much. The heroine in the book is my type. Fu Jiu was still smiling, and she winked at Shui Tingting behind her. So handsome and bewitching. Chapter 37. The English teacher took the lead in applauding and gave unprecedented affirmation, asking the students to learn from Fu Jiu. Jiang Feiyang's eyes widened. He originally wanted to see a joke, but he didn't expect to see this little weakling in the limelight. Fu Jiu sat down, glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, and curled up her thin lips. That obvious mockery made Jiang Feiyang feel like his face was about to be slapped swollen. Moreover, he didn't know why, but he actually thought that Fu Jiu looked good like that. Was he crazy? Alright, students, this class ends here. Class dismissed. With one sentence from the English teacher, the students flooded out of the classroom. Fu Jiu took her school bag and threw it behind her handsomely. She still had her skateboard under her arm, and she slowly walked into the crowd. Qin Xiaodong was already waiting at the teaching building. Young master, where are you going? Wait for me. Fu Jiu stopped in her tracks. Many girls looked at him with blushing faces, and they stopped as well. Qin Xiaodong paused for a moment. Did he see it wrong? Why do all these female students look so shy? Young master. Qin Xiaodong lowered his voice. What did you do this time? Did you hit on girls? Fu Jiu took out her phone and replied lazily, no. Alright, Qin Xiaodong said seriously. I trust you. Then, young master, where are we going now? Are we going to Computer City to buy parts? I don't know why, but young master seems to be very interested in these things recently. Fu Jiu opened WeChat and looked at the words, I'm here. She smiled. Before buying parts, let's go see someone first. Qin Xiaodong responded with an oh, completely unaware of the next critical attack. Who are you meeting? Qin Mo, Fu Jiu only gave him 2 words and walked away. Qin Xiaodong suddenly froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Even his expression was magnified to the extreme. Young master, wait, calm down. Young master Qin will treat you like a pervert and beat you into a bun. At the same time. At the gate of Jiang City No. 1 Middle School. A pure black Hummer with smooth lines was parked on the side of the road like a fierce tiger. The license plate number was white with red letters, and there were bodyguards standing around the car. His aura was shocking. But even so, it couldn't stop the enthusiasm of the students. It's Almighty Qin's car. Ah! I'm going crazy. Qin Mo was really popular, just like a superstar. As soon as he appeared, someone would pick up their phone to take pictures. No matter if it was a man or a woman, after seeing him play, no one would not love him. However, no matter how many people gathered outside, Qin Mo, on the Hummer, remained unmoved. He was sitting in the back seat. His nose bridge was straight, and his face was handsome. He looked like he was asleep. One of his hands was supporting his face lazily, and the other was resting on his long legs. His long and narrow eyes were slightly closed, and he looked very careless. But when his WeChat beeped, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as evil as the night, as though he could see through everything in this world. Qin Mo unlocked his phone, a line of words appearing on the screen. I'm heading that way now. Coco, who was sitting in the passenger seat, also heard the sound, and for some reason, he became excited. I've been playing games for so long, but this is the first time I've met an in-game character. What does Spade Z look like? It couldn't be a burly man, right? Chapter 38. Fatty was also very excited, and his fingers tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of high school student could be this good? I really want to PK his hacking skills in person. Coco bit the rabbit's ear. Then I want to play games with him. Don't do that, it will make us look weak. Fatty patted him on the shoulder. Bring out your online celebrity aura. Isn't it just a gay meetup? Coco snorted. You sound like you're calm, but your hands are still shaking. It seemed that CEO was calmer. The two looked at each other, and they couldn't help but look at the rearview mirror at the same time. CEO, Captain, should also be seeing someone in the game for the first time, right? Who would have thought that the cold CEO would actually agree to a gay meetup? But if that guy was Spade Z, then it wouldn't be strange at all, since the Hummer didn't leave, the school gate was already surrounded by students. This was the scene that Fujio saw when she came out. Everyone was tiptoeing and looking in the same direction, and their excitement was all expressed on their faces. Some girls couldn't help but cover their mouths the moment Chin Mo opened the window. Chin Mo looked out the window, and his dark eyes scanned the crowd inch by inch. Spade Z would come out in a moment. As soon as he thought of this, his usually indifferent thin lips revealed a playful expression that he had never shown before. Paw! He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His arm was casually resting on the outside of the car, and his fingers were playing with the limited edition Zippo lighter. His black hair was a little messy due to the breeze, and his godlike handsome side profile was enough to make people scream. Ah! Young Master Qin. Young Master Qin. Qin Xiaodong, who was behind Fujio, was stunned again. He didn't expect that young Master Qin would appear in front of them right after he said he wanted to see young Master Qin. It was like God was torturing him. He had to hold young Master back and not let him do anything stupid. Fujio looked at Qin Xiaodong, who was standing in front of her, and raised her eyebrows. Young Master. Qin Xiaodong tried to persuade him. Look, there are so many people here. It's not a good time to go. Besides, young Master Qin rarely shows up at school, so he must be waiting for someone. Let's not join in the fun, okay? What if he was expelled from school again? Madam must be very sad. Fujio laughed. You know he is waiting for someone, but do you know who he is waiting for? Ah. Who? Qin Xiaodong was at a loss. Fujio's voice was deep. Young Master, to be honest, you can't be so whimsical. This time, Fujio didn't wait for him to finish. She shot him a sharp look. Then, he reached out and pushed away Qin Xiaodong, who was shivering from head to toe. He put on his headphones, clamped his skateboard, and strode toward the black Hummer surrounded by the crowd. That head of silver hair, under the dim yellow light, was exceptionally dazzling. Wait, that's Fujio. Could it be that he still hasn't given up on young Master Qin? No. I just fell in love with him. Let's make a bet. If young Master Qin sees him, he'll definitely tell him to scram. Chapter 39. It was as if she couldn't hear the discussions around her. Fujio walked straight to the front of the Hummer. Even the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. The bodyguard immediately reached out and blocked her way. Last time, it was this young man who suddenly appeared and threw himself into the CEO's arms. This time, he appeared again. Was he treating them like decorations? Facing such a block, Fujio didn't show any fear. Instead, she raised her eyebrows, and there was a playful smile on her lips. Qin Xiaodong, who was in the crowd, let out a sigh of relief. It was good that young Master Qin's bodyguard was here. He wouldn't let young Master pass, so he didn't have to worry about young Master Qin. Ah. Coco, who was sitting in the car, also recognized Fujio. It's him. Fatty was busy with the computer last time, so he didn't know what was going on. Who is he? I think he's the gay who has a crush on Captain. Coco said this and found Chin Mo looking at him, so he immediately changed his words. No, I mean he's a crazy fan. Yes, very crazy, and his way of expressing his love is a bit special. Hearing this, Fatty looked quite disappointed. Oh, then he can't be Spade Z. Fujio saw that the other party didn't have any intention of opening the door, and Chin Mo seemed to be looking down at his phone. She opened WeChat and sent a message. Almighty Chin, tell your bodyguard to move. Chin Mo suddenly paused and raised his head subconsciously. His eyes met the familiar figure outside the car through the bodyguard. Under the dusk, that person was holding a skateboard in his left hand and a phone in his right. His school uniform was unzipped, and he was wearing a beige t-shirt. His eyes were black and white, and they were hazy. The light shone down on his silver-haired eyes, and for some reason, there was a hint of seductiveness in them. Chin Mo's pupils shook violently. Then, his deep eyes narrowed dangerously. Fujio saw that he saw her, so she shook her phone lazily. Chin Mo didn't let Fujio get in the car immediately. He flicked the cigarette but with his slender fingers, lowered his eyes, and sent a message. The one outside, is that you? After Fujio saw the message, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. So the people in Almighty Chin's family are counted as one. This time, Chin Mo saw Fujio reply to his WeChat with his own eyes. At this moment, there was a faint cold light in his eyes. Get out of the way, let him come over. What? Coco was so shocked that he bit off the rabbit's ear. The bodyguards looked at each other and froze in place. Even Chin Xiaodong's eyes widened in disbelief. He actually let the young master pass. The surrounding students covered their mouths in disbelief. Fujio raised her hand and patted their shoulders. I told you that your CEO was waiting for me. Why don't you believe me? The bodyguards immediately turned around. They wanted to prove it to their boss. They didn't believe it was true. Let him come here. Chin Mo repeated his words in an indifferent tone. Coco turned around in surprise. Captain, don't be like this. Even if that person hugged you before, you can't just beat him up because you want to, especially in public. Chapter 40. Chin Mo frowned as he watched Fujio's face, which looked like it had been kissed by God, get closer and closer to him. She smelled so good, with the smell of candy. The young man's light pink lips, which were perfect for kissing, were right in front of him with a teasing smile. In the face of such seduction, only Chin Mo could remain noble. His eyes curved into a smile, and his eyes were full of warning. Don't get so close to me when you talk. Get in. Fujio was a little surprised, thinking that he would blush or something. So boring. Almighty Chin was indeed not easy to deal with. But it was only interesting when there was a challenge. She would try breathing into his ear next time. Let's see if he would always be so indifferent. Fujio found something interesting to do. Coco and Fatty, on the other hand, widened their eyes as they listened. What did they just hear? Captain actually said to let this gay get in the car. Fujio knew what these two were thinking. As soon as she sat down, she curled up the corner of her mouth. Hello, let me reintroduce myself. I am Spade Z, Fujio. It would have been better if she hadn't said that. As soon as she said that, Fatty almost skidded on the steering wheel. Spade Z. Not only him, but even Coco's face also cracked in an instant. No wonder Captain paused for a second. Who would have thought that a gay nouveau riche would be that cool Spade Z? The setting shouldn't be like this. One had to know that among the students interviewed, the first person they eliminated was this gay. Was this a joke? Or was he still dreaming? Or was this gay pretending to be him? No, he couldn't be pretending. Because he saw Captain talking to this guy on WeChat. But this was too unreal. I imagined Spade Z to be a burly man, Coco said listlessly. Fujio raised her eyebrows and smiled wickedly. I'm really sorry that I didn't grow up to be what you imagined, so I can't overpower you. Coco, Captain. Now I believe that this guy is Spade Z. Coco clenched his fists. Can I beat him up? Spade Z was asking for a beating the moment he opened his mouth. This was definitely Spade Z's style. He recalled the first time he saw this guy in the game. He was so cocky that he didn't even add him as a friend. Other than the captain, no one else had his contact information. Fujio smiled. You want to fight? Sure, but I'm afraid you'll cry after the fight. Coco's face turned red from being teased, but he couldn't argue with Fujio. He could only look at Chinemo and blurt out, Captain, you were the one who recruited him. You should control him. Fujio was stunned by his words. Why did she let Almighty Chin control her? Are they close? They had only seen each other a few times. Didn't they just exchange WeChat messages? But Chinemo turned to look at her without warning. That well-ironed suit and noble side profile were very much in line with his identity as a CEO. He indeed had the disposition to manage people. Then he put down the esports magazine in his hand and said to himself in a calm tone, Don't bully children. Hearing that his captain was standing up for him, Coco immediately raised his chin like a cat. But on second thought, wait a minute. Children. The corner of Coco's mouth twitched, and he felt wronged. Captain, are you really helping me? Aren't you bullying me with Spade Z? This is only your first gay meetup, and you're already so biased. Fortunately, Spade Z wasn't a girl. Chapter 41. Fujio thought Chinemo was right and was about to praise him. But before she could speak, Almighty Chin spoke again, slowly bringing up the dark history she didn't want to face the most. Also, I don't like men, especially not being kept by men. Fujio, such a sharp-tongued man, was not worthy of praise at all. Coco laughed this time and felt curious. He asked Fujio with the rabbit in his arms, How did you become Spade Z? When our captain added you, you were dismissive. Don't you like our captain the most? Hearing that, Fujio let out a long sigh. People are always young and frivolous. Are you saying that you don't like President Chin anymore? Fatty turned around. Chin Mo's fingers froze. Coco's eyes turned cold as he looked at his captain. He pulled Fatty back. What the hell are you talking about? Chinemo saw that the car was quiet, and he glanced at Fujio indifferently. His deep voice carried an irresistible coldness. Drive. Yes. Fatty didn't dare to say anything else. He quickly sat up straight, stepped on the accelerator, and drove to the main road on the left. The students outside the Hummer were all dumbfounded. Especially Qin Xiaodong, whose face was filled with astonishment. When did their young master and young master Qin become so close? Young master Qin didn't beat him up and even took him away. Was he going to bring him home to teach him a lesson? This was not impossible. Qin Xiaodong shuddered at the thought of that scene. What to do? Should he inform Madam? No, he should call the young master first and ask him what was going on. Fujio's phone rang as soon as the Hummer made a turn. She picked it up casually, as if she didn't care who was sitting next to her. Hey! Young master, it's me. Qin Xiaodong hurriedly said, Where is young master Qin taking you? Is there any danger? Fujio listened to the conversation and raised her eyebrows. She looked sideways and asked the man next to her, Where are we going? I'll take you to dinner. Qin Mo closed the magazine, his voice still calm. Don't people in the game have a meal when they first meet? That's right. But I really didn't expect you to be like this. To be honest, after Almighty Qin heard that she wanted to meet him yesterday, did he look up a lot of procedures? Fu Jiu paused and said to the phone, he's taking me to dinner. What do you want to eat? When Chen Xiaodong heard the answer, he became even more anxious. Do you want to eat dumplings? Chop you up and make you into dumplings. Young master, don't be afraid. I'll go and save you now. Fu Jiu, no, I didn't sleep with him. Why would he kill me? Don't think about these useless things all day. Fu Jiu corrected him lazily. She didn't care at all. We are just having a friendly meal together. Chen Xiaodong glared. Young master, you still haven't given up on sleeping with young master Qin. If he finds out, he'll kill you. His voice was slightly loud. Chapter 42. The air around the Hummer froze, not moving at all. Fu Jiu could clearly feel the changes around her, especially the cold aura coming from her left side. He already knows. Fu Jiu said helplessly and hung up. She looked at Qin Mo evilly. Would you believe me if I said it was a misunderstanding? Qin Mo looked at her, his gaze cold. What do you think? This is really a misunderstanding. In order to be more convincing, Fu Jiu emphasized the last sentence. You are so hard to sleep. Qin Mo laughed. His thin lips were cold, and he ground his teeth hard. I'm sorry, it's so hard to push me down. Should I lie flat and let you do whatever you want? If you want, that's fine too. Fu Jiu's tone indicated that she was really considering it. As soon as he finished speaking, Fatty's feet twitched, and his speed increased by several notches. Coco was trying to shrink into nothing. Qin Mo suddenly reached out his hand and pinched the face that made his teeth itch with hatred. He said in a deep voice, Fu Jiu. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows, raised her head, and looked at him in confusion. Her eyes were as beautiful as his cat's. It was mainly the fluffy silver-gray hair that gave Qin Mo an illusion. If you still want to eat, then talk less. Qin Mo let go of his face. His fingertips could still feel the smooth touch. His eyes couldn't help but look out of the window. There wasn't any warmth in his voice. Qin Mo told himself that since he was Spade Z, he wouldn't throw this kid out of the car window who liked to generate electricity randomly. The place they ate at was a star-rated hotel, the most expensive place in Rivertown. The lights were dazzling and the decorations were luxurious. Hundreds of goblets of red wine hung from the ceiling. Even the waiter was dressed in a white shirt and black pants. He was very well-mannered. Seeing Qin Mo's car drive in, someone immediately went up to welcome him. However, that person was not a waiter, but the hotel lobby manager. President Qin, I've cleaned up the greenhouse on the top floor. Today's Australian lobsters are all fresh, and there's also Arctic shellfish. When Qin Mo heard the manager's words, he nodded and said, tell him what he wants to eat. The lobby manager paused and looked at Fu Jiu hesitantly. It would have been fine if he hadn't seen it, but the moment he did, his heart nearly jumped out of his chest. Wasn't this the prodigal son of the Fu family? Every time he came to their hotel, he would always order a lot of things to show off his wealth and ask them to open a bottle of wine. In fact, he didn't even have that much money in his pocket. He was simply a nouveau riche that no one liked. Why was the CEO with him? He even wanted him to ask for the other party's opinion before ordering. Fu Jiu knew what the manager was thinking just by looking at his face. After all, she was no stranger to this place. In the past, she often came here to eat. Chapter 43. Yes. The manager found it very difficult to say this. Although he was surprised, he was good at reading people's expressions. When he raised his head again, his face was full of smiles. Young Master Fu, what else would you like to eat? I'll ask them to serve it to you. Young Master Fu. Fu Jiu paused and paused. I don't like the title of Young Master Fu, it's easy to be mistaken. The other Young Master Fu comes here often, doesn't he? The manager actually wanted to say that he couldn't be mistaken. That person was obviously very elegant and was also an excellent student. Anyone could tell that. But the CEO was here, so he couldn't say anything. He could only say hesitantly, then, call me Lord Joe from now on. Fu Jiu pulled out her lollipop with a skateboard under her arm and smiled domineeringly. The manager's smile froze. What? Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Managerly, you don't want to. The manager glanced at his CEO's face. Qin Mo's eyes turned cold. Fu Jiu. Fu Jiu looked up and blinked her left eye at Almighty Qin, who was very close to her. She looked very innocent, but she couldn't hide her hostility. Don't be too arrogant. Qin Mo turned sideways and pressed her head with one hand. He lowered his voice, and his irresistible breath landed on Fu Jiu's left ear. He said in a magnetic and domineering voice, "This is my territory." Fu Jiu's heart sank. That's right, that's right. The manager raised his head and was about to snort. But his CEO turned his gaze over again, and his eyes were cold. Managerly, you can call him whatever he wants you to call him. Don't make me teach you how to treat customers. This was completely different from what he expected. Shouldn't the CEO just tell that nouveau riche to get lost? Why was he supporting him? The manager froze again. Then. Qin Mo lifted his eyelids, put his left hand into his pocket, and said arrogantly, "Call for someone." The manager trembled and immediately lowered his head. Lord Joe. Go and serve the lobster. Fu Jiu nodded at him. The manager cursed in his heart. A dog relying on its master's power. Fu Jiu looked at his unwilling back, and the corner of her mouth curled up coldly. This time, Qin Mo lost his patience and pulled her over. According to Almighty Qin's style, he never liked physical contact with people. So, he was tugging at Fu Jiu's school uniform. Just like that, Almighty Qin dragged Fu Jiu to the top floor like a cart. Both Coco and Fatty felt that Spade Z was able to survive until now because of his gaming skills. Otherwise, the CEO wouldn't have dragged him to the top floor, but directly thrown him out of the hotel. But even so, the CEO was very tolerant of this kid. She even touched his head just now. This was something that had never happened before. Fu Jiu didn't mind being dragged around by Almighty Qin. She had a great time today anyway. However, I can't finish so many lobsters. Fu Jiu looked at the table full of Australian lobsters and felt a little melancholy. Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his expression indifferent. If you can't finish it, bring it back. You can take it away. She didn't expect Almighty Qin to be so considerate. Fu Jiu just erased the image of an inhuman tyrant from her mind. Then she heard Qin Mo say, "Go catch 2 live ones for young Master Joe. Let him finish all of them." Fu Jiu. Chapter 44. No one dared to disobey Qin Mo's words. Not just in the hotel owned by the Qin group, but in the entire Jiang city, whatever he said, there would be people who would do it immediately. Soon, the waiter brought in 2 lobsters in bamboo cages. Each lobster was huge, and the pincers were still moving. Fu Jiu watched from the side, and she suddenly felt that the rest of the lobsters were even harder to swallow. This man was doing this on purpose. Couldn't they have a happy gay meetup? CEO Chin. The waiter raised the bamboo cages respectfully so that their CEO could see the quality of the lobsters better. Chi Nemo still had a cigarette between his slender fingers, and he glanced over there indifferently. Give it to your Lord Joe. Your Lord Joe. Fujio held a big pincer in her mouth and took a big bite. Chi Nemo looked at the young man's slightly depressed face. Under the shocked gazes of others, he reached out his hand and touched that fluffy head. With a faint smile, there was a deep sense of oppression. Eat slowly. If it's not enough, you can ask for more. Hearing that, Fujio wiped the corner of her mouth decisively and smiled wickedly. I want to go pee first. Chi Nemo took his hand back. His eyes were deep and beautiful. He looked at Fujio for a few seconds before curling up his thin lips. We won't touch the lobsters, so you can keep them. Go. He didn't even give her a chance to pee. Fujio narrowed her eyes. This man was really vengeful. But it was okay. She was eating his money anyway. She didn't know how to cook lobsters, but she could eat them. When she had an empty stomach, she could fight again. Fujio loosened her fingers handsomely, stood up, and walked out of the greenhouse on the top floor lazily. But she didn't know what Coco and Fatty's expressions were like behind her. The second time. Today was the second time that their CEO touched this guy's head. The two turned their heads at the same time, looking like they wanted to say something but didn't. Of course, Chi Nemo knew that they were looking at him. He reached out and flicked the cigarette butt, saying one word lightly. Captain, why are you so nice to this Spade Z? You didn't even treat me and Fatty this well. Coco finally said everything he wanted to say today. Chi Nemo took the wet towel from the waiter and wiped his hands. You can eat if you want. Just watch the two live ones and start from 10. Coco paused, because he thought about the scene carefully, and when he looked back, he realized that it was really scary. It seemed that the captain's gentle concern wasn't a good thing after all. But, it was still a little strange. Captain had never touched anyone's head before. Not to mention touching her head, even that kind of smile just now was rare. Just as Coco was racking his brains, Fatty saw his CEO stand up for some reason. He hurriedly swallowed the beef in his mouth and asked, CEO Chin, where are you going? You guys continue eating. I'm going to take a look at that guy who's trying to escape. Chin Mo casually turned his side profile. His black hair fell down, revealing only a pair of bottomless eyes, which were as bright as an eagle in the sky. When he said this, his eyes were as cold as crushed ice. It was fine that he escaped once, but how could he let him escape again in front of him? The hotel's bathroom was built at the corner of every floor. It was made of high-quality incense, and the exterior decoration was basically the same as the hotel's, very luxurious. But Chapter 45. If she went to the women's restroom, she would be treated as a hooligan. If she went to the men's restroom, the men's restroom wasn't sealed. Unless she squatted, Fujio tucked her bangs behind her head and furrowed her pretty eyebrows. I've decided, I'll go to whichever restroom is empty. To make herself look less wretched, Fujio put a smile on her face and put one hand in her pocket. She stood at the door handsomely. A girl just came out of the restroom. She looked up and saw a handsome young man. She blushed immediately. This guy. How could he be so handsome? But it was strange. Why was he standing here? The girl looked at Fujio in confusion. Fujio curled up her lips and pointed at the sink naturally. The faucet seems to be broken. I can't get any water out. Oh. Let me see. The girl lowered her head shyly. What should I do? I'm being hit on by this handsome young man. Should she act more reserved, or more bold? The girl suppressed her excitement and reached out her hand. She said in a small voice, "It's not broken. Everything here is sensitive. You can put your hand in, and the water will come out." Oh, I see. Fujio looked like she suddenly realized something. She turned her face to the side and smiled at the girl. Thank you. No, you're welcome. His skin was even better up close, and his eyelashes were unbelievably long. How could there be such a good-looking person? The girl felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. She was about to ask for his WeChat number. Suddenly, a fair and slender hand reached out and placed itself between the two of them, grabbing onto the back of the pretty boy's collar. The girl was stunned. What was going on? Fujio was stunned as well. She looked up subconsciously at the person who grabbed her. It was a figure standing with his back to the light. It was Chin-emo. He was wearing a black suit jacket, and his shirt collar was half unbuttoned. That extremely handsome, mixed-race face exuded a noble and extraordinary aura. He was reserved and low-key, but there was a hint of danger in him. Now, he was grabbing her with one hand, and his other hand was casually in his pocket. He was staring at her with deep eyes. Fujio smiled calmly. Almighty Chin, what a coincidence. You're here to use the restroom too. Could it be that they're here to watch you flirt with girls? Chin-emo asked slowly. He had heard a few words just now and his lips turned cold. The faucet is broken. I can't believe you came up with such a lame pickup line excuse. This brat was simply exuding electricity all the time. Going to the toilet was the same. Did he like to tease people that much? It can't be helped. There's only a water tap here. Fujio wasn't embarrassed at all. She looked at the girl who was shocked by the scene and blinked her left eye. Her peach blossom eyes were very beautiful. The girl covered her mouth and looked at the two of them excitedly. Almighty Chin. Fujio tapped her thin lips with her fingertip and made an evil sound. Almighty Chin, so she's your fan, this time. Before Fujio could finish, Chin-emo grabbed the back of his collar with force and dragged him into the men's washroom with an indifferent expression like he was carrying a kitten. That lazy look and silver hair really did look like his cat. They both didn't know what was good for them. Chin-emo took a deep breath, reached out his hand, and pinched the young man's chin. Every word he said was vicious. Be good, don't force me to kill you. Do you understand? Fujio coaxed in a low voice. Don't be angry. We're good friends. Chin-emo sneered, pushed him away, and fixed his messy collar. Don't use your flirting tone to flirt with me. Pee yourself and get back here. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Sleep with me, okay? You. Chin-emo turned the plane, and his fingers paused. Then, his voice became even colder, like an unsheathed ice, full of lethality. He can't sleep. His looks aren't up to par. Chapter 48. In order to save Fatty, Coco asked, Captain, should we try that Fujio? There's no need to try. Chin-emo tilted his head and said lightly, without any emotion in his voice. It's him. There was no other person who had this trait that made him want to strangle him to death just by looking at him. Fatty frowned. I really don't understand why Spadesy suddenly asked to meet him. Could it be that he was playing games to get closer to the CEO? Is that why he wants to meet him? After he finished speaking, Fatty deliberately looked at his CEO. Fortunately, his CEO was rational and didn't seem to reject his idea. However, Coco seemed to have thought of something and suddenly sat up straight. No, it's not to get closer to the captain. If it was such a simple reason, he wouldn't have rejected the captain when he added him. Isn't our team recruiting new people recently? Many companies want to send people to the corporation, but there seems to be a problem with Madame Fu's side. All the players have been poached, and now she can't even submit the most basic list. If this continues, her company will definitely go bankrupt. You're saying that Spadesy wants to meet the CEO because of this? Fatty said and glanced at Chin Mo again. But this time, he didn't know if it was his illusion, but the CEO's lighter in his hand actually paused for a moment. However, Chin Mo didn't say anything. He lifted his jade-like fingers and took the wine glass from the table. He swirled it back and forth twice. His deep eyes were a little cold. So the reason he wanted to see him was because of this. After Fujio finished filling the tub, she found that there were 10 more crayfish in front of her seat. In fact, the table they were eating at wasn't small. It was the kind of luxurious presidential table that could seat 12 people. Now the entire table was filled with crayfish. Almighty Chin and the others' food only took up a little bit of space. Was he trying to make her die from overeating? Fujio looked up at Chin Mo, feeling very melancholy. Why didn't the strategy guide teach the Almighty that he should be reserved and tolerant when meeting a game friend for the first time? Even if you're rich, you shouldn't waste it like this. This isn't a crayfish that costs 10 renminbi. This is an Australian crayfish. When the man saw the silver-haired young man grumble gloomily as if he was complaining about something, he chuckled softly. Then, he took out a cigarette and bit it between his thin lips. He tilted his head and lit it. Then, he raised his chin. It's all yours. Eat it. Okay. Fujio also smiled. It was a little evil. So what if he ate? He wasn't the one paying anyway. However, why did Almighty Chin look even colder than before? She didn't really take off his pants, so he didn't have to sneer at her, right? Could it be that something had happened while she was gone? Fujio pondered for a while but couldn't figure out anything. She ate a lot of lobsters and was very full, but she was still satisfied. As long as she could meet him once, she wouldn't have to disguise herself when she participated in the competition. She wouldn't have to worry about Chin Mo checking on her at all times. To be honest, this was the first time she had encountered such a difficult opponent. He even deduced that she liked to eat lollipops. If he continued to investigate, who knew what he might find out? Right now, she couldn't afford to be investigated by Chin Mo. Chapter 49. After eating the last pincer, Fujio felt it was time to leave. She was about to say goodbye to Almighty Chin. Thank you for the lobster, see you next time. But she heard Chin Mo ask with a faint smile, done eating? Yeah, I'm done. Fujio nodded. She was in a good mood. Not bad, Almighty Chin had learned how to make small talk with people. It turned out that the gay meet-up strategy was useful. Chin Mo chuckled. A cold glint flashed across his eyes when he saw how lazy he was. He lifted his finger. The waiter immediately handed over the menu with both hands. Chin Mo glanced at the waiter. Go get the bill. The waiter was confused. Didn't the CEO need to pay for meals? Coco and Fatty didn't understand what was going on either. But they heard their CEO say calmly, give it to your Lord Joe. He's treating us today. Coco, Fatty, Fujio, even the waiter, Fujio's reaction was the most direct. Her eyes, which were about to flirt with Chin Mo, twitched. When did this meal become her treat? And wasn't this hotel owned by Chin? Almighty, I remember this is your family's business. Are you sure you want me to treat you? Where's your demeanor? Fujio raised her eyebrows. Coco and Fatty were a little embarrassed by their conversation. After all, their CEO had never asked anyone to treat them, not to mention at his own hotel. The waiters standing at the side also looked at each other and didn't move forward. Chin-mo looked at Fujio's beautiful peach blossom eyes and said faintly, I only treat people like this when I'm close to them. Fujio, this man was doing it on purpose. He was using her words to shut her up. She had only breathed into his ear. How could he treat her like this? She only had 5,000 yuan on her, and it was earned from playing games. At most, she could pay for 5 lobsters. How did the gay meetup course teach people? Almighty Chin, if you keep being so vengeful, you won't be able to get a girlfriend, let alone a good friend. What? You don't want to treat me? Chin-mo raised the teacup in his hand. He didn't drink it. Through the mist, his eyes shone. Didn't you say we have a good relationship? Fujio leaned back and said straightforwardly, it's not that I don't want to, but I don't have the money. You don't have money. Coco's tone was a little high as if he didn't believe it at all. How is that possible? Fujio laughed. Why not? Someone thought I was embarrassing and was afraid of offending young Master Chin, so he removed my name from the Fu family. You should know about this. Coco did know about it. After all, his family had some business dealings with the Fu family. This matter caused quite a stir. His dad also said that no matter how bad Fujio was, his old man shouldn't have treated the one he was raising outside as his own. He even cut off Fujio and his mother's financial support. That third was even worse. He took the opportunity to poach people. He was basically forcing He Honghua to her death. For a moment, Coco didn't know what to say. He turned his head and looked at his CEO. But before Chin-mo could speak. Chapter 50. In an instant. The temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. The waiters stood on the side, their fingers frozen, and their eyes were filled with unspeakable shock. Someone actually dared to make such a gesture in front of their CEO. And, what did he say? Using his body. It couldn't be what they thought it was. But looking at that young Master Fu's posture, it was indeed the CEO. It was hard for them not to think in that direction. Especially when his pale lips seemed to be only a centimeter away from their CEO's ear. If he got any closer, he would probably kiss him. The CEO's aura was obviously much colder. But that young master didn't seem to notice it. The mole under his eye shone with a bewitching luster. What? You don't like me using my body? Then let me kiss you. Fujio said happily, and it seemed like she was about to take action. Chin-mo's eyes suddenly turned cold. He reached out one hand and grabbed his wrist tightly, pressing Fujio down on the table. That look in his eyes showed that he really wanted to strangle Fujio. Then, he forcefully pulled out Fujio's wallet from her school uniform pocket and threw it into the waiter's hands. His voice was as cold as a cold pond in the snow. Swipe all the cards for him. Yes. At this moment, no waiters dared to disobey Chin-mo's orders. Everyone could see that their CEO's cold and indifferent image was about to be blown away by this person's teasing. Fujio still wanted to keep some of her assets, so she tried to negotiate with Chin-mo. Can you leave me 1,000 for my living expenses? Chin-mo didn't listen to Fujio at all. He pressed him down with that posture and looked down at him. Chin-mo had to restrain himself from breaking this guy's wrist. Who knew that this guy would learn to be obedient? He maintained that posture and looked at him with a smile. His warm breath seemed to fall on the back of his hand. He couldn't tell why. Chin-mo felt that Fujio was like his cat. Even her hair was soft, and it scratched his palm again and again. People who didn't know better would think that the young man was acting coquettishly. But in fact, this guy was just pretending. Even if they were to play games together in the future, he would change this guy's bad habit of flirting. Where did he learn to flirt with anyone he saw? Chin-mo narrowed his eyes slightly. He put out the cigarette in the ashtray with one hand and pinned Fujio down with the other. He was still wearing a suit jacket, and a lock of black hair fell down with his movements. He looked very masculine, not only in his posture, but also in his fierce eyes. Chin-mo's current state was enough to make one's legs go weak. No wonder his fans called him Almighty Chin. Too handsome. So cool. Unfortunately, Fujio wasn't in the mood to appreciate the Almighty's beauty. After all, her card was about to be used up, and this was simply bad news for a hacker who had just saved some money for her computer. President Chin. The waiter walked over with sweat on his forehead and raised the card with both hands. A total of 26,580 yuan has been spent. Lord Zhou's card only has 5,000 yuan, which has been used up. Chin-mo nodded faintly. Fujio thought that this was the end of it. After all, the money in her card was gone. What else could she do? Chapter 51. Tab. People who came here to eat never tabulated, especially people of their age and circle. They loved to compare who was more generous. Tabulating when they went out to eat. How shabby was that? Coco lowered his head and bit his finger. The CEO's plan was too evil. He was obviously trying to help Fujio become famous in the circle. In the future, no matter where Fujio went, this matter would be brought up. Fujio didn't care about her reputation, but she cared about money. Almighty Chin, didn't the guide tell you that your friend doesn't have any money? Shouldn't you make up for the difference? Chin-mo glanced at him faintly. That's the normal process of a gay meetup. Obviously, that doesn't suit you. In order to prevent you from having the ridiculous idea of paying with your body, it's better for you to hand over the money. Fujio, this lobster meal was really a loss. In order to avoid further losses, Fujio, who originally didn't want to bring the 2 live lobsters home, decided to carry them back even if she had to carry them. This was her treat, and she still owed him 30,000 yuan. But spending money to avoid disaster, and after this meal, she wouldn't have to worry about being investigated again. Do you want to go back yourself, or do you want me to give you a ride? Chin-mo glanced at the lobsters in the young man's arms, and he seemed to think that the young man looked like his cat that had just been drenched in the rain. Chin-mo knew that the young man only looked pitiful, but his claws were still hard, but he still asked in a low voice. After all, the Chin family's etiquette and upbringing were there. Chin-mo also thought of another point. If this guy asked for anything in the car, as long as it wasn't too much, he would agree. After all, a big part of the reason why he met Spade Z this time was to ask him to join his team. Fujio didn't stand on ceremony. She flipped her silver hair and curled up the corner of her mouth. You give me a ride. I don't even have enough money to take a taxi. This place is a bit far from my house, and it's not practical to skateboard back. Okay. Chin-mo reached out and opened the car door. His expression was very calm, and he still looked cold and noble. At this time, the atmosphere of a normal gay meetup began. Fatty and Coco always thought that it wasn't a gay meetup. It was simply a knife and sword fight. Fatty was still driving. There was music in the car. Fujio sat on the left side of Chin-mo. There was some distance between them, but they didn't talk much. Coco wasn't used to this, and he couldn't help but ask, Fujio, what about your mom's company? Is it really going to close down? Why did it close down? Fujio retracted her gaze from the night outside the window. Her eyes were deep. Coco licked his lips. I heard that most of the contestants in your mom's company have been poached away, and now they can't form a team. If you don't make adjustments, you'll be disqualified. Once the investors pull out, your mom's company won't be able to hold on. There is indeed such a thing. Fujio smiled, and a bone-chilling coldness appeared in her eyes. Who did you hear this from? That three outside? Or that illegitimate child of the Fu family? No matter who you heard it from, my mother's company will not collapse. Even if it collapses, it should be someone else. Coco didn't expect that the person who had been so unrestrained in the hotel just a moment ago would be filled with such a strong sense of oppression. Chapter 52. Chi Nemo also looked over at Fujio. That pair of deep eyes made it impossible to see through his emotions. President Chin, we've arrived at the Fu mansion. Fatty stopped the car. Chi Nemo glanced at Fujio again. Fujio was still holding 2 live lobsters in her arms. She raised her head and smiled at him. Then I'm leaving. Thank you, Almighty Chin, for sending me back. See you in the game later. The two of them were sitting together. As long as Chi Nemo tilted his head, he could see that innocent face. He could even see the fine hairs on his cheeks. Seeing him like this, Chi Nemo didn't care so much about his bad mood. That's all. You're not going to say anything else? Anything else? Drive slowly. Send me a WeChat message when you get home. I'll call you for a dungeon raid. Fujio leaned forward and brushed the black hair in front of Almighty Chin's forehead with her fingers. If the Almighty is willing to fight in person, they will definitely offer a higher price. Originally, Chi Nemo wanted to say, if you're here because of your family's company, I can help you solve it. But he didn't expect that this guy would only be quiet for a minute before he started to court death here again. Chi Nemo took a deep breath, narrowing his eyes. His chest rose and fell, and his voice was low. The words seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Scram! Angry again. Fujio glared at him and then burst into laughter. She raised her hands and rubbed Shinmo's hair. Almighty, don't be so cool all the time. Be more amiable. After all, this is the first time we've met. Don't leave on bad terms. Yeah, you look better this way. Coco and Fatty sat in front of the car, not daring to look back. What was that brat doing? Rub the CEO, Captain's head. Have you ever heard of plucking feathers from a tiger's head? This was the same logic. The CEO probably wanted to tear him into pieces this time. Chi Nemo had never been rubbed on the head before. His fingers loosened, and tightened again. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He pushed open the car door and threw the smiling young man out. Drive. 2 very cold words, without a trace of warmth. Fatty's body trembled. Without saying a word, he immediately stepped on the accelerator. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, his CEO wouldn't be able to control himself and fight with Spade Z. Fujio, on the other hand, was very happy. She curled her thin lips and waved at the rearview mirror with a bright smile. Almighty Chin, who was dazzled by such a smile, snorted coldly and turned his head away. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Avoid her. But she still had ways to harass him. He lowered his head and sent a WeChat message over. Guru, remember to log on when you get home. Let old driver carry you through the dungeon. Chi Nemo held his chin and swiped open the message. He snorted coldly. Do I need you to carry me to clear the dungeon? Then you take me. It's all the same.